One day after school, Amina, a lively young black girl, invited her white friends to visit her father's store, Monsieur Dupont. He was a respected businessman of French origin who had married Claire, an African woman. Together, they had created a warm home where the culture and identity of their origins blended in perfect harmony. Their conversations were often filled with stories of the struggles and victories of their ancestors, inspiring Amina to fight for her dreams. That day, Amina's enthusiasm was palpable. She had planned a small tour, wanting to share with her friends the beauty and richness of the family store. While organizing the shelves, she felt proud to show the fruits of her father's hard work. Suddenly, a new security guard, Mark, entered the store. He had been hired for his strictness, but his prejudices and preconceived ideas, fueled by society, clouded his judgment. Although he had never met Amina before, he looked at her suspiciously as soon as he laid eyes on her. She was absorbed in admiring a sparkling bracelet, examining it from every angle, when Mark approached suddenly. "What are you doing here?" he asked harshly, his eyes scrutinizing every move Amina made. Surprised and disappointed by his attitude, Amina tried to explain her interest in the bracelet. "I'm just looking, it's pretty," she began, but her words were lost in Mark's indifference. "You're trying to steal something, aren't you?" he accused, his tone harsh. At that moment, the room seemed to freeze. The customers, caught off guard, turned their eyes away, unsure of how to react. Before Amina could respond, Mark, in an unacceptable gesture, slapped her violently. The impact of the slap echoed like thunder in the store. Time stood still as Amina, in shock, felt tears welling up in her eyes. The whispers of the customers made her feel even more vulnerable. At that moment, something within her awoke. She could not stay silent in the face of such blatant injustice. Amina straightened up, her gaze becoming determined. "I'm not a criminal. I'm Mr. Dupont's daughter, and I deserve respect." Her voice, though trembling, carried an unexpected strength. A murmur spread through the store, and several customers began to gather around her. Her friend, Julian, stepped forward, his hand on Amina's shoulder, offering support. "This isn't fair, Mark. She's just looking at a bracelet." The confusion was visible on the customers' faces, who observed the scene with a mixture of horror and empathy. Mark, realizing he was now the center of attention, seemed to hesitate. His gaze shifted from Amina to Julian, then to the customers who were murmuring among themselves. "I'm doing my job," he tried to justify, but his voice lacked conviction. The murmurs turned into more animated conversations, and a few customers stepped forward, clearly disagreeing with his behavior. "This is unacceptable," exclaimed a middle-aged woman, arms crossed. "How can you treat a young girl like this?" The pressure on Mark increased, but he was stubborn. "I'm just protecting the store." "You don't understand what's happening here," he replied, but the customers weren't letting him off that easily. Amina, taking advantage of the wave of support, took a deep breath and addressed the crowd. "I don't want to be seen as a criminal just because I'm different. I love this store, it's my home," she said, her voice clear and strong. "My father worked hard to build this place." Her father, Monsieur Dupont, emerged from the back room, having heard the commotion. Seeing Amina with tears in her eyes, he quickened his pace. "What's going on here?" he asked, his face concerned. "Dad, Mark accused me of stealing a bracelet, and—" Her voice broke, but she continued, "and he slapped me." Monsieur Dupont turned pale at the sound of those words. Anger boiled inside him as he turned toward Mark. "Mark, how could you do this?" he shouted, stepping forward with fury. "Amina has done nothing wrong. She has every right to be here, like any other customer." Mark, already under pressure, felt the weight of the customers' stares. "I'm just doing my job," he tried to defend his actions, but his voice betrayed his uncertainty. "What's happening here is not about work," intervened a customer who had witnessed the scene, her voice full of passion. "This is about respect and human dignity." Amina, still in shock but empowered by the support of her father and the customers, cleared her throat. "I'm not here to cause trouble, but to celebrate my culture and share a moment with my friends." This store is a space where I should feel safe, not a place for judgment. The murmurs of disapproval among the customers turned into a collective consensus. Stories of injustices they had experienced or witnessed began to surface. A man, a former soldier, spoke up. "I've seen injustices in combat, and I'm here to defend innocence and integrity. What you did, Mark, is disgraceful." Monsieur Dupont, his heart heavy, looked at Amina. "My dear, you don't have to endure this. We will make sure this never happens again." With the strength of the community behind her, Amina spoke again to Mark. "If you think people like me can't appreciate beauty, then you need to reconsider your heart. I'm here to dream and build a future, not to live in fear." At that moment, Monsieur Dupont spoke up. "Mark, I'm asking you to leave the store. This behavior has no place here. We celebrate diversity and equality." Mark, realizing he had lost the support of the customers, slowly nodded and left the store, his head lowered. A heavy silence filled the room, followed by a collective sense of relief. Amina, sensing the atmosphere that had been created, turned to her father, her voice trembling but full of emotion. "Will this really change anything, Dad?" Monsieur Dupont, still concerned, knelt down to her level, looking her straight in the eyes. "Yes, my dear. It starts today. What we've experienced here is not only an injustice to you, but a lesson for all of us. Every person here has the power to raise their voice." Encouraged by his words, Amina took a deep breath and addressed the crowd. "I'm very grateful for your support. It's because of you that I feel strong today. Together, we can make sure that this store is a place where everyone will feel welcome, no matter their skin color or background." The customers, moved by her speech, applauded, and an elderly man at the back stood up. "I've been coming here for years, and I've never seen anything like this. Amina, I support you, and I want this place to be an example of what we can do together." The scene in Monsieur Dupont's store left an indelible mark on all those who witnessed it. After Mark's departure, an atmosphere of solidarity and hope filled the store. Murmurs of approval and encouragement could be heard, but Monsieur Dupont still had a lingering worry in his heart. As the crowd began to disperse, Monsieur Dupont took Amina by the hand and led her into the back office, away from prying eyes. He needed to speak to her openly. "My dear, what happened today is unacceptable," he began, his voice trembling with emotion. "You should never have to face such treatment, and I cannot just stand by. I'm going to file a complaint against Mark for assaulting a minor. This has to stop." Amina's eyes widened, a mixture of surprise and fear. "But Dad, is that really necessary? It could get complicated." Monsieur Dupont shook his head, determined. "Yes, it's necessary. If we don't do something, this could happen again. There must be consequences for his actions. I want you to understand that you have the right to be protected and respected." After a few moments of hesitation, Amina nodded. "Okay, I support you, Dad. But I'm scared." "It's normal to be afraid, but fear must not stop us from standing up for what is right," Monsieur Dupont replied, hugging her. "We'll do this together." The days that followed were intense. Monsieur Dupont hired a lawyer to help bring the case to court. Witnesses to the incident were contacted to share what they had seen. Amina, though hesitant, realized she had a role to play in this process. She felt uplifted by the support of her friends, family, and community. The weeks leading up to the trial were filled with frenzied preparations. The lawyer, a wise and respected man named Maître Lefebvre, took the time to meet with Amina and explain each step of the procedure. "Justice may seem like a long road, but it's important that your voice is heard," he said with an encouraging smile. Amina felt torn. On one hand, she was grateful for the support she was receiving. On the other, anxiety grew as the trial approached. She spent hours thinking about what she would say in front of the judge. With the support of her friends and family, she began writing her thoughts in a notebook, putting words to her pain and her hope. One day, as she was sitting in her garden, her friend Julian came to see her. "Amina, I want you to know that I'm proud of you, no matter what happens in court. You're already an inspiration to all of us," he said, sitting next to her. His words warmed Amina's heart and gave her some courage. The day of the trial finally arrived. Amina and Monsieur Dupont went to the courthouse, hearts heavy but determined. The atmosphere in the courtroom was tense, with every eye on them. Mark's lawyer, a cynical and aggressive man, stood up to defend his client, trying to minimize the incident and paint Amina in a negative light. Wasn't she just playing the victim to get attention? He exclaimed with a sneer. Amina, already nervous, felt her confidence waver at those words. But Monsieur Dupont did not miss the chance to defend his daughter. She's not a victim, but a young woman demanding her right to respect and dignity. The real violence is that inflicted by those who judge without knowing, he retorted firmly. One by one, the witnesses took the stand, sharing their experience of the scene and how shocked they had been by Mark's behavior. Monsieur Dupont's lawyer outlined the laws on violence against minors, and each testimony strengthened the case for the prosecution. Finally, the moment they had feared arrived. Amina had to testify. She stood up, her hands trembling, but she took a deep breath and walked to the witness stand. The courtroom fell silent, all attention focused on her. I don't want to be seen as a criminal, she began, her voice hesitant but firm. I'm just a girl like any other, full of dreams and ambitions. This incident made me realize that some people judge without knowing. I don't want anyone else to go through this. Her testimony, filled with emotion, touched the hearts of all those who listened. As she spoke, her fear dissipated, replaced by growing determination. She expressed her hope that this incident would serve as a lesson for everyone, reminding them of the importance of respect and empathy toward others. The judge, visibly moved by her words, nodded and thanked Amina for her courage. After a few days of deliberation, the verdict was finally announced. The court found Mark guilty of assaulting a minor and ordered rehabilitation measures as well as compensation for Amina. In the courtroom, a mixture of relief and joy filled the air. The customers from the store, her friends, and family, who had all come to support Amina, applauded and expressed their happiness for the victory. Monsieur Dupont, tears in his eyes, took Amina in his arms. You were incredible, my dear. This proves that we can change things. Amina, her heart full of pride and hope, replied, It's because of all of us, Dad. Together, we made our voices heard. With this victory, Amina felt that her mission had just begun. She wanted to use this experience to help other young victims of injustice stand up and fight for their rights. Her dream of becoming a lawyer became clearer, and she knew she would fight for a future where everyone would be treated with dignity and respect. The community, inspired by Amina's courage, began to organize workshops and events on the themes of equality and respect. Monsieur Dupont's store became a gathering place where stories of struggle and victory were shared, strengthening the bonds between different cultures. And so, Amina and her father, Monsieur Dupont, continued to build a future where love and understanding would prevail over hate and fear.